Guitar Business Radio is the podcast for the business of guitar, where you'll always get no reviews, no demos, and no idle chatter. From players to CEOs and in between. If you have a professional or business connection to the world of guitar, this show is your window to insight and information you won't get anywhere else. I'm Jeffrey D. Brown, and I approve this message. So let's get to it. From Guitar Business Media, welcome to episode 35 of GBR, the show that dives deep into details, drills down for perspective, and decompresses with a little inspiration to send you on your way. And like we said, it's not likely you'll get this anywhere else. You know, one of the things I love about doing this show is that I get to talk to a lot of extraordinarily interesting people from all walks of the guitar universe. And because our format allows us to get into areas where most other interviews don't necessarily go, we get to know quite a bit about our guests on the show. And in that process, we frequently learn things that can be translated into generalities that might apply in some way to our own circumstances. So on today's show, our special guest is Tish Ciravolo, who's the founder and CEO of Daisy Rock Guitars. Now, she basically created the category of girl guitars back at the turn of the century. That's 2000. I suppose a lot of us who've been around a while, our natural instinct is to think 1900, but no, it was 18 years ago. And during that time, Daisy Rock has established itself as pretty much a one-of-a-kind company to this day, with a rich history and a lot of accomplishments. And Tish's story as a player, entrepreneur, speaker, author, and much more is going to be discussed right here in just a few minutes, so hang around for that. Well, once again, it's time for our official promotional moment here on GBR. This is the spot where we tell you something important about our own organization, or even better, somebody else's. So you've heard me in the past talk about one of our companies, Guitar PR. And for those of you who don't know, we're a modern-day PR news, marketing, and consulting firm that's dedicated to helping our clients increase sales, grow their guitar-related businesses, and get to the next level. And we use a variety of tools to accomplish that goal. One of those tools, the thing that we're probably best known for, is our affordable, structured press release program that utilizes our famous 10-step sequence to assess, create, deploy, and distribute marketable news to guitar-related media and markets. We're the only firm in the guitar universe that offers this particular methodology. And as a credible and respected third party, Guitar PR delivers important news to the right people. And while this message may not apply to you, if you're involved in a guitar-related business, organization, or professional capacity, arrange a visit today to guitarpr.com to find out if our services are right for you. No appointment is needed, and walk-ins are always welcome. Virtually, of course. And while we wait patiently for you to show up over there, let's just move on to something completely different. So, Tish Ciravolo is the founder and CEO of Daisy Rock Guitars. And as you'll hear, she's had a really significant impact on the guitar market by essentially inventing the market category of girl guitars. There have been other companies, some big ones for that matter, that have attempted to enter that segment, if you will. But for the last 18 years, Tish has been on a mission with Daisy Rock, and there's a lot to talk about. So let's just get to it as Tish Ciravolo joins us right here and right now. Hey, Tish. Thanks so much for coming on the show with us, and welcome to GBR.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Okay, so like we always do, let's go back in time a little bit, I guess with the GBR time machine. I've never used that term before, but why not? And let's find out a little something about some of the things in your earlier years, maybe when you were growing up, in school, et cetera, that made a substantial and lasting impact later in your career and business? How's that work?
Okay. Yeah. So I think the noise you need is like one of those back in time.
Transporter of some kind.
It's a little Wayne's World there.
Right.
Okay. So I grew up in the Central Valley of California. And I obviously grew up in the 70s. And my best friend, Barbara Hoy's older sister, Anne, played guitar. She played acoustic guitar. And I'm talking about when we were in like 8th grade. And we were so madly in love with the Hardy Boys. So I loved Sean Cassidy. And Barbara loved Parker Stevenson. And every night we'd kiss their poster on the wall before we went to bed. And we just knew we were going to grow up and they were going to marry us and everything. And then I got it in my head that if I learned how to play guitar, that maybe Sean Cassidy would actually date me. So Anne showed Barbara and Barbara showed me, and we started playing acoustic guitar. And then later in life, I met Sean Cassidy, and he's a very nice gentleman. And no, we didn't get married. But, everybody has their idea on why they want to start learning how to play guitar. And I don't really believe that girls are that much different than guys, that they just want to meet boys. It's a lot of inspiration for learning how to play guitar. It's a lot different, in 2018 that those statements don't necessarily count anymore with all the transgender and different kind of sexes that we have. But back in the 70s, it was a little bit more defined. I guess is a good word for that. So then I started dating a guy that was a guitar player, and I started singing backups in his band. And he didn't really think that girls should play guitar. And that was the late 70s, 80s when I went to college, and then I moved to LA in 84. And I was telling my new boyfriend that I wanted to go back to playing guitar or bass. And the bass to me has always been something that I heard. It was like that thing that I really keyed in on in every song. And if you have any idea what the music was like in the 70s, you will know that a lot of it was really bass heavy. It was a lot of great bass lines, and a lot of great bass players came out of the 70s. And so
I was there.
I was influenced by it. And so I started playing in bands in 84 in LA. And I did the typical all-girl band that would sound like the Psychedelic Furs. And I played in the Ragdolls, which is a punk rock band that sounded like a female version of the Ramones. And you kind of in LA, you're kind of trying to find your way. I didn't like playing with my fingers as a bass player. I went to Dick Grove School of Music for one time when the instructor told me that you had to learn how to play with your fingers. And I got up and walked out, and I was like, I play with a pick, and Simon Gallup and Tim Butler are my gods. So I was really upset that they wouldn't let me learn how to play with a pick. So I just went home and kind of locked myself in a closet and figured out how to do it. And I think the best advice you can give to anybody that's starting out is just get out and do it and see what you like and what you don't like. And of course, there was this immediate discrimination that I dealt with because I was a female musician. There was about 5 of us in LA at that time. And I didn't really key in on it until I started having to deal with it. Like every time I'd walk into a guitar store, they'd be like, who are you here for? Are you the band's manager, or are you here to get strings for your boyfriend? I'd be like, no, I'm an actual player. And then a couple of times that my all-girl band Lipstick went to sound check, they wouldn't sound check us because, according to Andy, the sound guy, they didn't sound check the chicks band because they all sucked. And so, I mean, we dealt with it like on almost every level, it wasn't as bad as on the Sunset Strip as it was, like, say, in Riverside or Bakersfield and some other places that we played out. But that was a definite issue. I think it's gotten somewhat better, but I still hear a lot of horror stories from girls that are trying to deal with the business of being a musician. And I think that's why you have these great organizations today, Women in Music, which I belong to, and people that have to try to, lift up female musicians, because we are still trying to make it like a level playing field. We're still trying to catch up. So
you started off as a player, like a lot of the folks that we talked to on this show. And did you work at this professionally and make some kind of a living out of it? Was it a full-time vocation?
Oh, you're adorable. Look at that. No. No. I played in no exaggeration, about 200 different bands in LA in a 10-year period. Because it was, the Sunset Strip came alive, and the last band I was in was probably the most popular, which was Lipstick. We were heavy metal. We opened for bands like Poison and Warrant and LA Guns, and we had a big billboard on the side of the Roxy, but it never paid the bills. You know, it was always I always had a day gig, and I had I've had a variety of jobs as a musician to try to, you know, pay for my passion.
What were, do you mind me asking some examples of some of those jobs? What kinds of things did you do?
Oh, okay. So I worked for a very famous agent named Helen Kushnick, and she managed Jay Leno at the time, and it was during the late night wars. So there was a movie done about her called The Late Shift, and it's when David Letterman and Jay Leno were both vying for the job. And for that year that Jay Leno was the host on Tuesday nights for The Tonight Show, I worked for her for that year. In the movie, there's a very famous scene where there's a girl with red hair dressed all in black, kind of fixing up the Tonight Show desk. And she comes in and starts screaming at her. And kind of was my day to day. I lasted longer than anybody had ever lasted in that job, but it was good teaching on how to be a ball buster, because she was definitely a ball buster. And I worked for a computer company called A&D Communications, which was one of the very first computer companies that actually married video with photos on a thing called a Laserdisc. That was a brand new technology back then.
I recall.
And IBM gave them $1 million to develop that. I was a waitress at Duke's Coffee Shop.
I was hoping for that.
Next door to the whiskey for about 3 years. And I worked there with my ex-husband, and I had met him through his band, and we were all really great friends while I worked there. I worked at the Roxy as a cocktail waitress. I did a lot of temp agency work. So I was signed with Friedman Agency so they would send me out to many random jobs. So I think you have to do whatever you have to do to pay the bills.
Of course. What was the span of time as we lead up to my next topic, which is getting into the business that you're in? What was that span of time? Like 10 years or? You know? Well,
I moved to LA in '84, started playing in bands. I'd gone to college in Kansas City. And so I moved to LA. My mom wanted me to move back to the San Francisco area, and I just wanted to be in Southern California. So I moved to LA in '84. I met my husband, and my current husband, in '92. And when I met Mike, he was working retail at a place on Sunset Boulevard called Lab Sound. And he played in bands, and I played in bands. And then I started Daisy Rock in '99 to 2000.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because that was really my next topic. And I wanted to ask you, how your husband Mike figured into all of this. I guess we should stipulate that Michael Ciravolo has been running Schecter guitars for like what, a couple of decades now, or
96, yeah,
something like that. So let's talk a little bit about the launch and all the dynamics that were going on there, and who knows better than you.
It's, when you look back, and it's just how things happen. So we were living together for a couple of years. We both played in bands. He was at Lab Sound. And in fact, our first date was during the riots. So it's very interesting. Yeah. Lab Sound a guy named Herschel ended up going out of business, and they turned it into the Mesa Boogie store that it is today. And Mike started from Lab Sound down at Sunset Custom, which was owned by Mr. Shibuya, Hisataki Shibuya, who owns Musicians Institute and a lot of other entities. And so he started working for Mr. Shibuya at Sunset Custom, and he managed the store. And when they decided to shut down Sunset Custom, Mr. Shibuya asked Michael to take over and be part of this Schecter guitar research, which if you know anything about Schecter, at one time it was a parts company.
That's correct. That's really what we know them as.
Right. So it was like, can you turn this into a guitar company? And there was Dave Hill was doing it at that time. There's a lot of other people involved, but I'm just kind of focusing on my husband's part. So him and Rob DeLeo worked at Lab Sound together. So Rob DeLeo's band got signed, changed the name to Stone Temple Pilots through Atlantic, and kind of hit it really big. And so he was one of the first endorsed artists, of course. And so Mike started building this guitar company in '96 and changing it to Schecter Guitars. And it was really with friends. It was with people that we knew in the business. As you know, everybody moves to LA. Some people make it and some people move back to wherever they're from to be the big fish in the little sea instead of in LA, which you're always in a little sea. Right. And so he really had this vision. He had this vision of that. And in the process of him, being at NAMM in a 10 by 10 booth with 3 folded tables, and I was the first Schecter girl, I would sit on a stool and play a bass and smoke a clove cigarette back when you could smoke in the booth. It was like, we were like, young and having a lot of fun with it. And then in 2 years, I got pregnant with our first daughter, and I had our first daughter, Nicole, in '98. And it just kind of kicked into higher gear for Schecter. They came out with a 7-string. That was really, one of the first companies before a lot of other companies jumped on that bandwagon. And because I had my baby daughter, I started thinking about what I could do to get her into the music business and want her to learn how to play guitar. And I really didn't think there was anything out there for her. And so one day she was just doing a drawing of a daisy. I was now pregnant with my second daughter. So there's a very quick time frame that happens in. And I took this daisy and I drew like a neck and a little headstock on it. And I took it to my husband at Schecter and his luthier. And we started talking about, what a little guitar for a little girl would look like and sound like and play like to get more girls to learn how to play guitar. It was like a very casual conversation. And I had been working at Schecter kind of part-time on and off. I mean, at some point in the beginning, Schecter was 5 people. And I was one of those that did, the accounting, receivable, billing, mailing catalog, whatever. We all had this mentality of whatever it takes. There was no big titles, it was just whatever it takes to grow the company. And so because I was working at Schecter, we kind of started Daisy Rock as a division. So we get, we send the samples away, the drawings away, we get the samples back. It's like on the couch in the Schecter offices and we're looking at it and we're not really like, it's really cute, but we don't really know what it is. And I was like, what's the name? And I was like, well, it looks like it's a daisy and it looks like it rocks. So we went Daisy Rock, we're just like, it's very casual. And I'm only trying to express that now because I've had a lot of marketing people do their thesis in college on this concept. And they really think that there's a lot of times in life you do put something on a whiteboard and you put it from A to Z to make it successful. And this just wasn't one of those times. It was like, my husband said, why do you want to make a guitar for girls? And I was like, for one, how many problems I have as a bass player. He'd built me 2 basses. I was like, they're always so heavy. They smashed my breasts. It was like, it caused me to like have this hunch all the time. So he was like, we were like, how could we fix this problem? And so we made this cute little, lighter in weight, shaped like a Daisy Rock, and named the company. And our first concept was, okay, so we probably will get like 100 guitars. I'll build a little website for it. And we'll just, sell it to our friends. It kind of felt like that. Mm. And then Mike Tunn, who was at Musician's Friend at the time, saw it because I'd sent out some press releases about it. And he was like, oh, well, let me put it up on the website for MF and see what happens. And it blew up.
Yeah.
So I spent 4 days before Christmas with my husband on the weekend packing and shipping all these Daisy Rock guitars. Like I was like, I don't know what we signed up for. That was not part of it.
And was it just one guitar, or did you have more than one model or anything?
Well, we came out with the Daisy, and we came out with the short scale and the artist and the bass, because I wanted to do a bass because I'm a bass player. And then my husband was like, you should do a full scale. It's literally like we had gotten it into my kitchen on the dining room table, and I had friends coming over and they were all like, why aren't you making these guitars for us? And I was like, well, because the concept really was like to try to get more younger girls to learn how, and they were like, no, I want one. And then as soon as like they wanted one, it occurred to me that it might be more of a glam kind of thing. And then also because it was lighter in weight, a lot of the people that I knew that played guitar were like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. And it's so much easier to play. But the idea of what goes into that guitar, what makes it sounding like a great guitar, is my husband's technology of what he knows about how to make guitars sound kick-ass. It was his, it wasn't mine. I wasn't the one that was studying pickups for the last 20 years because
Sure.
parts are parts.
Yeah, that's right. And we may have a chance to talk to him at some point about parts and things.
To it. Yeah, and he's very knowledgeable. That's why he is a president of a thriving guitar company, Yeah.
Well, that gives us a sense of how everything got started. But now let's get it a little bit into the weeds as we sort of think about the inside baseball stuff that we're somewhat known for doing on this show. And now that, you've got like 16 years of history at Daisy Rock, let's talk about some of the more important milestones for the company and also, if there were some challenges along the way. I'd like to hear how you might have handled those. So the floor is yours once again.
So it's been 18 years. I launched the company in 2000. So after I had these samples made and we started production, it was like, how do you tell the world? So I'd always gotten this really great magazine by Carla DeSantis called The Rocker Girl in the 80s when I was in all these different bands. And she was the only kind of zine out there that was promoting women in music. So they put on their first conference. So I paid to go to this Rocker Girl conference in Seattle in November of 2000 and launched my company in a little, corporate ballroom in a little 10 by 10 with 5 guitars on the wall just to see what people would say. And I got to tell you, I got a lot of really positive comments, but I also got this kind of fraction of people that were coming in and they were saying, why are you propelling the myth of pink? Why does it that pink has to be girl? And I was like, well, I'm doing them pink, blue, and yellow because those are my daughter's favorite colors. It was so like organic to me to do this. It wasn't like, I'm going to do this because then people will buy it. So that was kind of my first inclination. So I go, I have 5 samples. That's all I have. And I have NAMM coming up in 2 months. So we go to this, we're there for 3 days. We pack all the guitars. At the end of the session, Courtney Love was the speaker. And I was at the end of the session talking to her and I showed her the guitar and she said, oh, this is so cute. And she signed it. My very first yellow guitar that I've ever had done. We pack up. I pack all the stuff. I leave it at the front desk. I take the Courtney Love guitar with me, jump on a plane, fly home. The guitar has never come back. What?
It was lost?
So I call the Renaissance and I'm like, yeah, I've not gotten the shipment and blah, blah, And so they watched their videotapes and they got a videotape of the 2 guys putting the guitars in a laundry basket and wheeling it out to their car. And they steal my samples.
Oh, man. All of them?
The other 4 that I had. And I'm like, what do I do for NAMM? How long it takes to build guitars. And so they recovered 2. 2 of them have never been seen since then. They're like, okay, so we'll file an insurance claim. And they're like, what's it worth? And I'm like, millions.
Oh, yeah, right.
Right.
Good luck with that.
Right. So they basically gave me the cost of the hotel room for 3 days, which was nice. But that was my first inclination, and the 2 people that did it got fired. So I was like, oh, so maybe.
Well, I would think so, right? Might have gone to jail too. Could possibly.
Oh my goodness. So then we rushed and I did my first NAMM in January of 2001.
And you got I assume you got some guitars built, right?
Yeah, we rushed. I mean, literally they were delivered the first morning of NAMM at Thursday.
Oh, God. We had not like cutting it close, huh?
I had a 3x3 space.
3x3?
3x3 on the end of a Schecter booth.
Oh, okay. I got it.
And I was at least on the floor. I didn't have to be in dreaded Hall E. So I've always felt really blessed about that.
Right.
And then I do my first NAMM and it's 1,000 people going, oh my God, that's so cute. And then it's like every girl stops what little female girls there are at NAMM. And about 90% of the guys just walk by. And then they're dragged back by their girlfriend. And it's their wife or whoever they're at NAMM with. What stays at NAMM happens at NAMM. And all that. Yeah, see, you got that laugh down. So then I started.
I don't know where to go with that. So
I'm passing out, postcards and trying to take orders. And it was a success. I mean, and, I just thought, a couple of dealers. I opened my 300 dealers that weekend.
300?
And everybody,
300?
Yeah. And it was something like, I had like this whole buy-in, like buy 3.
What is that like one every 2 or 3 minutes or something like that?
No, but it was just, I had my girlfriends there helping, and we had their daughters passing out stuff. And everybody went, oh, something new. You know how that happens at NAMM.
Sure.
And because the buy-in was so minimally, it wasn't even $1,000. It was like, I was telling all the dealers in the beginning that I would do all consignment. I was like, just put it in your window at your music store. And if you don't think you can sell it, I'll take it back.
What were just to break in a little bit, what were the guitars selling for in those days?
They were $279, and $329 was like the most expensive. And then I think the full scale, I have to go back, full scale Daisy Artist was $379.
Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't in the $799 range.
No, but it was accessible for.
Right. Yeah. And so I had all these dealers going, okay, well, I'll put one in the window and 2 in the back, and we'll start with an electric and acoustic and, see how it goes. And I didn't get any of them back.
Oh.
So that was very inspiring, and I launched. But the next summer NAMM I did the next summer NAMM, and I was half the booth with Jody head straps, and I was the other half of the booth. So we split a 10 by 10 in Nashville. And this is back when Nashville used to count, if you know what that means. And it was the biggest show. It was a much bigger show for me than the January NAMM show. And I decided I would dress up like a cheerleader and do pink pigtails.
Oh, God.
And I did backflips down the aisle, and I had my own little cheer, Daisy Rock, which drove Jody Head insane because she was like, you couldn't be more opposite. She's like tattoo cool, and I'm cheerleader funny. Yeah. And but I talked to a lot of dealers. Sam Ash came in, and I made an impression. I got in the MMR with my pink, pigtails. And so then the next year, I'm kind of skipping, but I'll try to keep.
No, it's okay. I mean, it's your interview.
Yeah. And so we went through, our second Christmas, and it just kind of kept building and building and building. And so the next year, Newsweek called me, and they said, we've heard this rumor about something about a girl guitar. And I said, great, you want to do an interview? And they said, actually, no, we don't want to interview you. But if you know anybody that's famous, they were like, we would like to interview that person to see what they think about Daisy Rock guitars. And I didn't really know anybody. I mean, I hadn't made my, Joan Jett and the Bangles, and I hadn't made any of those connections yet. I'd gotten Courtney Love to sign the guitar, but I didn't know her. And so I was talking to my husband, and he's like, we just started dealing with Robert Smith from The Cure, see if you'd like to talk to him. And my husband's like close friends with, at that point, Prince. He's been making Prince guitars for years. And so we're trying to figure out like who. And so I get the reporter on the phone. I go, well, it's not a girl, but maybe you'd like to talk to Robert Smith. I mean, we sent him, at that point we're making the Heartbreaker guitar, and we'd sent him one of the Heartbreaker guitars, and he loved it and wrote me a poem, which was very sweet. And the guy flips out. He's like, oh my God, I'm the biggest Cure fan ever. So he goes and talks to Robert Smith, and just gives me a blurb in Newsweek about the guitar company making guitars for girls. Robert Smith from The Cure thinks it's the coolest thing ever. And that started it. So because Newsweek did something, Time Magazine wrote an article, then People Magazine called me. And so they said, we're going to do this article on you about making guitars for kids. And do you have a place where we can have a bunch of kids playing your guitars? And I was like, well, I have a daycare that my daughters go to in Burbank. So we went to the backyard of my daycare woman, Therese's house. And that's the big famous picture of me with the pink long sleeve jacket doing a big Pete Townsend windmill jumping off a milk crate.
Oh.
And that came out in 2002. July. And because People Magazine called, then the Today Show called. So then I flew to New York And Katie Couric played my guitar. She played during the break, going into the break, she played Leaving on an Airplane, Leaving on a Jet Airplane. Living on a Jet.
Yeah.
And then they did a Corey Greenberg, who used to be the tech guy on the Today Show, said this woman came out with this company and it's very groundbreaking. And we had about 8 guitars and 8 kids just kind of stand there playing with straps. And then we ended it on the Who song. And that was it. That was my big explosion. And 2002. So then I go back to Winter NAMM 2003, and the whole place is filled with pink guitars. It's like Fender has the pink guitar. Gibson's got a pink guitar. I mean, it's just like a wash. The whole floor is a wash in pink.
How did you feel about that? I mean, did you have a good feeling about it? Or, I mean, it was kind of a flattering thing. Obviously, you had an impact on the market. Or did you feel like, oh man, now I'm going to have competition or what?
I'm not going to lie. It was a shock at first. And then it was like, okay, it's being embraced. It's going to get a lot bigger than I will ever make it. I think the hardest problem I had is when Luna Guitars came out, because Luna came out and the girl that, I don't know if she's still part of it or not, but she came out with this concept with Dean Guitars. And she took kind of like my bio off my website and then cut and paste a lot of my stuff and then created this website and then said, everything I was saying. And her first NAMM, I went over to her and she's like, oh my God, I think you're the queen. I just love everything you do. And I said, that's great, but you have to do your own thing. You can't just come out and like cut and paste me. You need to come up with your own theme. You need to have your own marketing concept. If it's a guitar for girls, that's great. That's an open territory, but don't do my bio, you know? And,
what was the response to that?
She was defensive,
I remember them. I think I had some contact with them at some point in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, they're still around. But and then I thought she did something really great. I mean, they came up with a whole Luna's about the moon, and it became kind of like a hippie. Where is your mood? Is it that time of the month for you? Kind of guitar company.
Oh, okay.
At least I felt like she found her. But that was the one. And then when Gibson came out with their 2, Vixen and Goddess, and I went and checked them out, and the bridge was in the wrong place. I went, okay, they're not
not too serious about it.
And then, of course, Fender came out with their Hello Kitty, and that was the big one. That was the one that went in all the Hello Kitty stores, and but it also gave me traction. People were like, we can't get the Hello Kitty guitars. Can we get Daisy Rocks?
But you had the advantage of being pretty much the first to market, so.
Right.
Right. If you hold on to that and, there's certainly stories of people that are first in and sometimes they're the first out too.
Right.
In your case, though, you managed to stay on it.
Yeah. So that was in the early years and the competition, I was surprised, but like I said, it is flattery. It is, I created something that people think are cool. And they're never going to do a daisy or a heart or a star or a butterfly like I do because I own all those,
So did you see an impact? Could you measure an impact in sales? Did the curve change at all when you started to see competition? I mean, could you feel it at all?
No. I don't think that sales diminished at all. I think it was one of those situations where everybody wanted to be Daisy Rock. So okay. Of course, everything started, everybody wanted that silver sparkle Pixie acoustic that they could sell for Christmas. And you have to remember, my company is the fun company. So even though, Gibson came out, they called it the Vixen or the Goddess. That's not my, what am I trying to say? That's not my customer. My customer is the Pixies, and I named all my guitars off of songs that I liked. I named them all really fun names, much to the chagrin of every company I've worked with. They're like, what is an awesome blue? It's the sky.
Well, that makes sense. It makes sense to me. So I get it.
Right.
I get it.
But, think about how other guitar companies name their guitars. It's the Solo 666. It's not. It's Sunny Yellow. So I've always stood very apart in everything that I approach that way.
So what happens over the next few years from there?
Well, in 2003, I joined forces then with Alfred Music Publishing, and they started being my distribution company. And I moved my company from Burbank to Van Nuys. And all of a sudden, I had this gigantic wheel, with Schechter. It was, like I said in the beginning, it was a party of five, and Schechter just kept getting this bigger kind of monster. And it's an amazing monster, by the way. And, it was like I felt like I wanted to do something different. And it was also when I got approached by Alfred, they approached me to write a book, which I've written 6 books with them. And then sorry, my dog's licking my leg. I was thinking
I was going to interview the dog here pretty soon too.
Can you see him running around?
I saw the door open and I saw this little tail come around, and then eventually I saw the head, and it looks like he's trying to horn in on the deal here. But
yeah, I have Champ and Bella. They're our standard poodles, brother and sister. But Alfred, they had this concept that they wanted to get into the instrument business. And because of that, it was really different. And then again, it's that different angle. Like, how do you approach something and you have something to talk about where you're saying a publishing company, distributing a guitar company. And we had a lot of the same audience because, a lot of their audience is obviously dealers, but they're dealing with a lot kind of different dealers than I dealt with at Schechter. They're dealing with more the piano, the family style music stores, the people that wouldn't touch Schechter so much.
Right.
So, and they put everything that they could behind it. I mean, I came out with the biggest booth I've ever had. It was pink carpet and chandeliers. And, for my 15th anniversary, they put a big guitar cake together that was, 12 feet high.
I remember seeing you at NAMM probably around 2006 is probably where I first remember, 6 or 7 or somewhere around that, sort of connected to the Alfred booth.
Yeah.
Were you not?
Yeah, I was always like on the backside or in the front, you know what I mean? But So how did I look? Was I skinny? Did I look really young then? How was it?
You're asking me. I mean, I'm not sure I can remember what happened 4 days ago, but
okay.
But I have some other good memories.
All you had to do is you're hot.
Yeah, but if I say that, I'll be accused of something. So I gotta be careful. But
we had fun. We had, the Bengals played our booth. We always did a big autograph signing. So kind of when you have this big wheel behind you, that's kind of already putting, say, their resources into this thing, and then you become part of that thing. It became bigger than I could ever imagine it could have. And it was amazing because, when you're part of this family that's 90 years in with NAMM, you kind of get all of these different perks that come with it. And so it was an amazing ride. I was there for 13 years, and it was a real blessing for me. And I got really upset when I got out of it, and I couldn't imagine not being with Alfred. And now that I've been out for 2 years, I realized that was a real blessing too, for me to move on and do something different again.
Well, change is good, and change is constant. Sometimes it takes longer for change to happen. But you've always had the vision, the bigger vision. I refer to those as destinations, and so you've always kept your eye on the destination. And as I always tell people you got to do that, but keep all the options open on how you're going to get there. And so that doesn't foreclose on any opportunity. A lot of times we set ourselves up with expectations and narrow pathways to get where we want to go. And then when the road washes out, we're stuck. Don't know quite what to do. So it sounds like a good thing. What's been the most profound thing that's happened since you've been in this new realm of being non-Alfred?
Well, I'm part of KMC, which is owned by Jam Industries. And again, that's the gigantic wheel. So I feel like I'm a little kind of, I feel like I'm like the little engine that could with them sometimes. They're still trying to figure out with me how to grow it again. And I think we're going to do that next NAMM. It's like you're dating somebody for a year and you're still trying to figure out who they are. And that's kind of what it's felt like with them.
Sure, I can understand that.
But you were talking to me about milestones, and I have to say, getting inducted into a museum, the NAMM Museum, having Wanda Jackson play, dedicate the ceremony, that was from, those are those highlights that hopefully I remember to see when I'm passing away and all of it flashes before my eyes, because we did a lot of TV shows around that. And then Carolyn Grant, who runs the NAMM Museum, put that Courtney Love signed Daisy Rock at the end of the exhibits. Nice. And they run all these kids through there all the time on school tours. And it's the last thing they see. And they say, and now for newest innovations to ever come into the guitar business in 40 years, somebody completely changed it and turned it upside down and made a Daisy, and I get really verklempt now, even when I talk about it. It was a moment now I understand when you see people inducted into museums why they're like choking up and stuff, because it was a big moment for me. It was a big moment.
When was that?
2006.
No.
Yeah. And then, obviously, since I left Alfred and I've been on my own for 2 years, it was a very personal experience for me to go through, because like I said, I was really upset about it. And then I realized it was the last 2 years I had with my daughters, because both my daughters went to college this last September. And I had started a company when I was pregnant with my second daughter, and me and my husband, for those first 5 years, it was just every minute of every day. It got so intense. Let me tell you this funny story. So we had this really great friend of ours, Johnny and Davina, and it was like one of these mornings where the car wouldn't start, the brakes were out. He had come to pick us up, and then he'd picked Mike and I up, and Nicole and Sophia, and we'd taken Sophia to preschool, and we'd taken Nicole to kindergarten, and then we went to Schechter, and then we worked all day together, and then he picked us up and picked up the girls, picked up dinner, went home, fed them dinner, gave them baths, put them to bed, got in the jacuzzi, having a cocktail, having a glass of wine. And finally at 11:30 at night, he said, okay, no more guitar. He was like, it's all you guys have talked about for like 12 hours straight. And it's like, it dawned on me, like, this is my kid's life. All they do is listen to their mom and dad talk about guitar all the time. So when I went to Alfred, it gave us a separation.
Okay.
All of a sudden it was like, when we're home and it's dinner with the girls and we're doing homework or whatever, that's it. No more guitar. It's
probably a good idea.
We weren't building this mountain together that we had built for 5 years. But because I ran a company, and because it was my company, and I wasn't just, you get off of work at 6 and you're still home and you're on email and you're dealing with factories at 2:00 in the morning. And it's just the nature of this business. That's what my kids grew up with, both their mom and dad doing that, along the fact that we play in bands and we still go out, and he played in Gene Loves Jezebel and still was recording him and drama. And I had Sassafras, and now we both play in Gene Loves Jezebel and go out and do 80s tours. But ththese last 2 years, it was a real blessing. I really got to know my daughters, between the ages of 16 and 18 and 18 and 20. Those are very formative years for,
that's right,
young adults.
I did that not long ago because I have one son that's 26 now. And so I understand exactly.
And I would have never had that stay at home. Where are you going now? Mom, I'm going to go to the gym. Okay, what are you doing? I'm on my computer. I had just gotten up and left. And then they basically went to a Village Christian, which is a great school, but they were in school till 6:00 every day because I worked, and their dad worked.
Right.
But that also gives them, a very strong grounding that that's what you do with your life. You go out and you achieve your dreams. They at some point went, oh, you guys aren't like normal people. They were like, wait a second, you like playing bands and these are guitar companies. And why does everybody want to meet you? It was pretty funny. But so that was my blessing. And now it's all about, for me with Daisy Rock, it's really about keeping the machine running and figuring out different ways to do that with Jam and KMC. And every new company, there's, a social structure and politics, and I'm figuring out where I belong and all that. And they've been nothing but supportive. They're trying to figure it out too. It's like this girl guitar market was something I started 18 years ago. What does it mean today? With gender fluidity, what does it mean today?
Yeah, I want to come back to that toward the end here. But before I lose focus on this and I forget this question, I wanted to ask you about, because, as a CEO, and I've seen this in other CEOs, and I'm not saying that it's necessarily a function of being a CEO, but you have what seems like a fair number of extracurricular activities and passions, if you will. For instance, you do a certain amount of speaking, I've seen, and I understand you're working on a book. So there may be some other things. So let's talk a little bit about that.
The autobiography that my husband went, how long is it going to take? I've been on it about a year and a half. It's got all of these different themes in it, from, female entrepreneurship to how do you run a business as a mom, to how do you how do you be a mom and be a rock star, to, how do you start your own guitar company and change the world? So there's a lot of different themes in it. And I'm brutally honest, which is much to the chagrin of my family, I think, about how fabulous it is and then how difficult it can be. Mm-hmm. So I'm still working on it. I'm like, I'm going to say 90% done. I'm really, really, really
So
close.
Do you think sometime in the next year, maybe?
Yeah, I think it takes about a year to get out. It won't be for Winter NAMM 2019, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Winter NAMM 2020. That I come out and do a book signing and stuff in my dreams.
Sometimes these go on a long time. I think I've been working on mine for 5 or 6 years now. And it doesn't feel like I'm even close, but we'll see.
It's cathartic is what it is. So what I did in my book is I took my grandparents' life, because my grandparents hit the Dust Bowl in Oklahoma and migrated to a town called Chowchilla, California, and established the town with the Cashes and the Carters. And we're 6 cousins from Johnny Cash. And then the highest education they ever got was 6th grade. And then my mother, who grew up in that environment, and then decided when I was in 7th grade to go back to high school. But my mother was a traveling minister and preacher and preached the gospel, so I grew up in tent revivals. So I have this whole life of where is my background come from. And then I put in Michael's whole life of where his grandfather came over on a slave ship from Sicily and established their family in New Orleans in the late 1800s. And then his family growing up, and a lot of his family served in World War I and World War II. And then why he becomes kind of famous in New Orleans with his band, and then migrates to California to try to get the ultimate record deal that we all tried to get in the 80s.
Sure.
And how we just chance meet at the FM station when I'm playing bass and lipstick at something called, what was the name of the show? Bitches That Rock or something. Oh. It was like one of those. And he got dragged there because he would not be caught dead in a metal club, because he's an alternative goth guy. And he had just gotten dragged there by a friend and then saw me on stage, and the rest is history. But I go through like a little bit more of the technical aspects of like making the guitars and factories and factories and factories and factories. And I gotta say, it's the ugly side of the guitar business, and everybody who's in it would understand that.
I'm sure it'll do well, based on what I know and I've seen. Tell us about your speaking a little bit. I know that you've done some speaking. Yeah.
So I got asked to do a TED Talks, which kind of blew my mind away. And then I decided, because so many people with TED Talks have the big PowerPoint and they're really, when our numbers were this, we were catapulting to that. And I was like, no, I just wanted to tell my story. I just wanted it to be my personal triumphant, like, how do I go from a little town called Merced in the Valley, from a very poor family, to doing this in my life. And then along the ways, because I decided to do this with my life, all these lives have changed. All these girls have become rock stars. Miley Cyrus, Taylor Swift. I was dealing with them before they were anybody. Hannah Montana played a Daisy Rock on her first season of the show.
Nice.
And my kids are in the Hannah Montana movie, So that was my TED Talks. And then I decided to do NACA. So I went and did NACA. I got picked like 1 out of every 7,000 people they picked to come to the big thing. And I went and did that. And that was a lot of fun. And I get to be that person that is so unique that they think, well, what can we get that's very unique and different? So I'm the only person in the world that does what I do. And that's really a great achievement. And then at times it's really a hindrance.
Yeah, no, I get it. Because I think I've seen you on some of the speakers agencies, and that where they're promoting a lot of different speakers.
Right.
So I've seen you there as I was kind of doing my homework on Tish. But is that something you continue to do or are looking to continue to do?
Yeah, I want to, and it may be a little bit premature to talk about, but I've been talking to Team Rockstars through the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp. And that's something that I think would be a lot of fun to do. And my husband keeps saying it's just because you like Paul Stanley. And I'm like, no, it's not just because I like Paul Stanley. I really want to just go be part of Team Rockstars. We have a Paul Stanley thing gag between us all the time. So he looks, I don't know if you've ever noticed, my husband kind of looks like him. So
I've seen pictures.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm continuing that. But Daisy Rock is the focus. And then, of course, we've just come out with the band. I don't know if you saw any of the new band. My husband came out with an album last week called Beauty and Chaos.
No, I don't. I mean, it's possible something flew by me,
Right?
But I didn't stick. But that doesn't mean it's not significant.
No. It's brand new. It's brand new. And so it was available last Friday. He got Robin Zander and Michael Anthony on the same song singing together.
Wow.
He's got Simon Gallup and Wayne Hussey on the same song singing together. I play bass on a couple of the songs, and then I have my own song that we're shooting a video for next week.
Nice.
But it was like he's the curator of this project where he wrote all the music, wrote all the guitar parts. There's no synthesizers used. It's all guitar. And then he sent it to some friends of his in the industry and said, just creative liberty, just write songs to it. And Robin Zander came back, and Ashton Knight he's worked with him. He does 2 songs, which is pretty amazing. So we're just starting to see this kind of skyrocket now. It just came out last Friday, and they're selling CDs and albums.
Vinyls?
Vinyls.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Yeah, I can, because I see some of the guys that we've interviewed on here are going back and sort of remastering early albums into vinyls. It's kind of an interesting approach.
It's so different. My daughter said to me, why would you guys do an album? And I said, well, kind of throwback. And she was like, well, how did you guys buy music? And so I said, okay, so here's what used to happen. It's like you were a band. You got a record deal.
We forget.
They would send out all these albums to radio stations. They would play on the radio stations, and you would hear it and they're like, a radio station? I'm like, yeah. So you used to listen to the radio in your car, trying to explain to them how it used to work in life. And her look of, you didn't just click something and get the music. And I was like, no, there was no clicking. There was no clicking back then.
Now they call them terrestrial stations. Does that mean there's an extraterrestrial
I know.
station? I forgot when I first heard that, I said, okay, I'm looking for a saucer to come in and,
But for having 18 and a 20-year-old kid go, well, how would you ever sell anything like that? Like their mind was blown. I was like, well, you had to have the records in the stores.
Well, it was like when I was growing up, and our parents would say, well, we didn't have television.
Right.
How could you not have television? So it's the same cycle, just different players. I'm always interested in hearing different views on the state of the industry and what challenges and opportunities might be ahead. It's a common question I like to ask because I like to hear a lot of different opinions. So do you have any thoughts on that sort of big universe view of things?
I think gaming has changed it a lot. Daisy Rock is part of Activision. We did a couple of games with them, Guitar Hero stuff, and that was really great. But I don't know. I think it's really changed. But in the end, someone's going to pick up a guitar. Mm-hmm. That's at the end of the day. There's going to be a 5-year-old girl that's going to want to strap on a little Daisy Rock and jump up and down on her bed and play Rockstar. And that's what she finds fun. And those are the emails that I still get. Those are the parents that send me stuff to this day. And that hasn't changed in 18 years. There's been a lot of the industry changing. There's been a lot of how trade shows are and how people buy instruments. The first time my web mistress in 2000 said you need to get a website to sell a guitar, it was like, no one's going to buy a guitar over the computer. Yeah. You know what I'm trying to say, though, that it was just like how could you possibly buy a guitar over the internet? And then, of course, 18 years later, how else do you buy anything? But at the end of the day, there's still a little girl and a little boy that's going to want to pick up a guitar or a musical instrument and learn how to play that. And that doesn't go away. No matter how many other things change, that just doesn't go away. And then also, because when I started my company in 2000, we were looking at all the warranty cards that came in and all the different metrics that Guitar World and Guitar One and Women Who Play Guitar, all those companies had at that time. And we're determining there was like 4 or 5% of the guitar playing public was female. And now we know that it's closer to 30%. So we've grown this thing in 18 years.
That's a big difference. Huge
and
difference.
When you go back and you say, you know, were you insulted by the sea of pink guitars at NAMM? That's what caused, you know, I started the wave and the wave keeps going up. Yeah. And now, you know, unfortunately, you have other artists who I won't name because she's so mean to say that, oh, you know, I came out with the very first girl guitar ever. And that's not true. It's been around for 18 years and we've been doing this. And then I started, because we're both kind of close in age, you start seeing how these cycles happen in life. And I just don't think I think the guitar buying public doesn't change, but I do think the consumption and how the guitar industry and the state of the industry really has changed.
Yeah. So finally, looking back and looking forward for Daisy Rock, how would you assess where you are now? And what are your hopes and aspirations for the company going forward? Well,
we're coming out with ukuleles in January.
Wow.
That's something, that I've been trying to do for a couple of years. And that's the beauty of being with KMC and having some of those resources is now I'm kind of back to being able to being financed and having some of my dreams that and goals that I've had for the company get back on the drawing board, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited by that because they're very open to what do you think will work with me. And so next week I should get in a box of brand new samples and we call that, you know, Christmas monkeys. So I can't wait to see the new product for 2019. You know, when I started, there wasn't TV shows and film that had girls playing guitars. It was Josie and the Pussycats and Hannah Montana, you know, and then Freaky Friday. And there was like one here, one there, one there. And now I don't think you can turn on the Disney Channel or Nickelodeon without seeing a girl playing a guitar. And that's amazing. So, you know, how do we continue to build on that? You know, I have great relationships here in LA with the prop houses and a lot of the set decorators. So it's really important to me because even though it's very subliminal, to have that pink guitar on a wall in a scene I was watching The Purge last night with the guitar in it. Or, you know, when I see it in a TV, in a commercial. Or
like the Cars for Kids. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, the song, like it doesn't go away, you know. But that's kind of where I think we win is in all this kind of subliminal. It's so normal now for a girl to play guitar. It was so abnormal 18 years ago. So now that it's normal, what's the next 18 years? Now is when we take it over. You know, that's my idea. So that's my aspiration.
It's an amazing story, and I'm so happy that you have taken the time to share it with me and all of the people that listen to this show. I know it's going to be of interest to them. And I hope we can do this again when down the road, as I always kind of tell people, we always try to do a sequel at some point and kind of see what's happened, you know, in the interim. But I certainly wish you all the best. And again, thanks so much for coming on the show with us.
Oh, thank you. And don't forget daisyrock.com.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll have a link to it in the show notes. Thank you, Tish.
Go check out Beauty and Chaos too. Listen to the music and my song and my vocals and let me know what you think.
I will do that. And hopefully our listeners will too. Take care. We'll talk again soon.
Okay. Bye.
Welcome back to the back of the show. It's kind of like a post-game wrap-up without the sports. It's not that I don't like sports. It's just that there are no sports. But we do like to talk about what just happened, you know, the interview. So, what did you think about it? Let us know on the official episode page on guitarbusinessradio.com, on Facebook or Twitter @guitarbusiness. You can email us or call us on the GBR hotline at 888-777-2404. It's really easy. So, this interview with Tish was really a lot of fun. You could probably tell. I love listening to people who can express and articulate their passion and purpose in such a joyful way. There's really no way you could miss the fact that she loves what she's doing on so many fronts. That doesn't mean, of course, that building and running a business is always smooth sailing just because you have a great attitude. We know that not to be the case. But when you have visions and even bigger destinations which remain in clear focus, it's easier to see past the bumps in the road, which there are usually plenty of. I will say that one of the rather lighthearted moments was when her two standard poodles opened the door and walked right into the room and tried to get in on the interview. I so wanted to ask them some questions and maybe get a bark or two on the show. That would have been so cool, but just wasn't to be. And it certainly would have been a first on GBR. But another interesting aspect of the interview was the discussion of her disconnection a couple years ago from Alfred Publishing after a lengthy 13-year partnership of sorts. I could tell that at first the separation might not have seemed like a good thing, but isn't it interesting as she explained how that major change evolved into something terrific for her personally, being able to spend more time with her daughters before going off to college and whatever, and I'm sure there's a lot more. And all of that appears to have led to a new and invigorated future for the Daisy Rock brand and all the things associated with it. You know, there's billions of words written about change, and how we deal with it in our thinking usually dictates in large part the effect that it has on us. When we approach change from a place of fear, it almost always turns negative in some way or another. A positive view, on the other hand, more often than not, has the opposite effect. But how do we hang on to that glass full approach in the face of change? And notice I said glass full as opposed to half full. Why does it have to be only half full anyway? I know it sounds a bit like a comics line, but really, I always wondered about that. I mean, if you went to a restaurant and they served you a drink half full, doubtful you'd be satisfied. And by the way, I'm not even going to infer that this line is original to me. Somebody has to have said it before, probably many times. But to me, that just seems like the better approach. So to answer the original question, it always helps to be able to look beyond the change at hand and just know that it's part of something bigger. We don't always understand the bigger significance of changes as they occur. And again, this is not to suggest in any way that we should sit back and allow things to unfold in a random manner without exercising any principle-based options that are available to us. We absolutely should. But my interpretation of that statement is to always keep moving in the direction of your aspirations, the things you love, and the good work that you do in business and in your personal life. And I can sum that up by repeating what I always say at this point in the show. Stay positive, stay focused on the destination, and be sure to keep all your options open on how you're going to get there. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again on episode 36. And that's it for this episode of Guitar Business Radio. Thanks for being with us. You can stay tuned and stay in touch at guitarbusinessradio.com.